students that told me they had seen them do a presentation before. So some of you know what we're in for and how fun this is going to be. Joe has a degree in biology from Central Michigan University a year or two ago, and he has spent decades studying lots of our raptors and animals that we're going to talk about tonight. And his wife has, it says, who did you were a science teacher, what?
In Coleman, just up the road from where we live.
High school?
Coleman, I actually taught in both the middle school and the high school.
All right,
Yeah.
so she's going to know how to keep you, I was a middle school librarian, she's going to know how to keep you guys in line if you get out of line. So, if you worked in middle schoolers, you can handle Audubon club. So, I don't want, she also paints birds, I'd love to hear about that too.
I love, I mean, I was an art major in college. So they shifted me to science.
He is itching to perform, I can tell. So I'm going to let you work in whatever other biographical information you want about yourselves as you do your presentation.
We'll do it.
We just want to see you and hear you talk about the birds and do your thing. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. We love having all these people here about the birds.
You can remember Barb is boss.
There you go.
Yep. She gets stuck with all the real work, all the government forms, all the state government forms, federal government
that's
forms.
true.
At one point, because of the different projects I was involved in, we had to have 14 different state and federal permits in order to let them pretend like they were in charge of everything. You also are in charge of all the fundraising.
Yes.
She'll be at the back door with a great big bucket. Okay. And you do a lot of taking care of the herd animals.
Yes.
Have you ever taken care of an eagle?
Well, yes. We actually get in several eagles every year, sometimes up to 10. Our most recent one just came in a couple weeks ago from over in Tuscola County. We had one.
That's over in the thumb.
Yep, over in the thumb. We had one just a couple weeks before that, a young one that came from
Near Vesterberg.
Yeah, Montcalm County, I guess. So, you know, we get them from usually in the
You
central
really
part.
expect everybody here to memorize and put in place every county in Michigan? How many people know how many counties there are? 83.
Yeah.
82. Something like that.
83.
Yeah, there's a couple of them we wanted to kick out and give to Wisconsin.
We're keeping them.
Okay.
So yeah, we take it. And tonight.
How many eagles do you have right now?
Okay, just a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8? You got 8 bald eagles?
No.
Some of them got hair in their head. No. How many bald eagles do you have? I mean, do you have bald eagles? How many bald eagles with white heads and white tails?
Oh, okay. 3. I think just 3. Is that right? 3 bald eagles with the white head and white tail, because the young ones
Don't have white heads and white tails.
they are, chocolate brown.
They all
when
look
come
just
out of
like
the
golden
nest.
eagles.
But that's true. But then they change, and maybe when they're 4 or 5, and we have one that is actually 2 that are changing.
Yeah. They've got white on top of their head, white on their chin, white tail, and they have a little black mask. They look like a big oversized osprey. We have several of them, and when they put their wings out, they have white under their wings, which, according to the bird books, makes them a golden.
But they're not. They're bald eagles. Yeah, there's a lot of variation in the colors as they mature from the first year on to the 5th and 6th year.
So you remember over by St. John's, we got a call on a great big brown bird that was often really thick brush, and people could glimpse it, but it was hard to find it. And you called in your #1 best eagle spotter.
I do. I have a very professional eagle.
Who went out and was able to find it for us through all the thick brush.
Whoa, be careful.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah. You don't want to get caught by your eagle spotter. This is the one that finds eagles for us. Yep. And I'm carrying a golden eagle in my arm that he found that day.
So they are here in
Down through
Michigan,
the brush.
but rare. Not very often do you see a golden eagle.
Yeah, there's a golden eagle right there.
What's your dog's name?
Joey.
Joey.
Yep.
When he was young, he boinged a lot. So he was a baby kangaroo. Okay? But you got, well, that one, here's where you got one that looks like a golden eagle. This one also was hiding down in a swamp with an injured wing. And the people had gotten glimpses of it several times, but they couldn't find it to catch it. So we took Joey out, and you can't tell, but he's all wet. Because we trapped the eagle on the shoreline, and the eagle jumped into the water. Even a healthy eagle has a hard time taking off from water. They can't get a full wing beat. So on land, they can usually take a couple of jumps. If the wind is blowing, if there's waves, they get up on a wave top and put their wings out, and the wind will pick them up. So they can sometimes take off from water. But most of the time, they aren't rated as taking off from water because their feet aren't right. But that was a one-year-old one-year-old bald eagle that Joey found there. Okay? But, going to start out with some woes. If one does get loose, you have to know what to do, and that's to sit still and be quiet, because she will have the net, and she'll put it right over the bird, or she'll hand it to one of us. Only once have we ever had a big bird get loose and then attack the person who had the net, because it knew that it had been captured by nets. And we had to clean the blood all off, and it would get, but if it looks like we're having trouble, you can point the handle at us. And if you see us run, good luck. The first one we're going to take out is one that does a great job. People are hearing a lot of owls right now. In the daytime, mourning doves. Mourning doves are the #1 thing we get calls on for being owls. People are so happy to hear owls because they sound so pretty. But when we get all these reports of the owls singing so happily in the daytime, they almost always turn out to be mourning doves. But the first one we're going to take out doesn't hoot. That's going to make it a little bit harder for it to get mixed up with a mourning dove. In the whole world, there's about 200 different kinds of owls. Right here in Michigan, we've got 11. Put your hand up with one finger. Okay. 11 different kinds of owls. Thank you. Higher math always gives me problems. But usually when people think of owls, they think of owls that hoot. But of our 11 different kinds of owls, probably only 4 kinds ever hoot. So most of our different kinds of owls probably never give a hoot. But they make some beautiful noises. We used to have owls that lived in holes in the ground. We had them in Michigan nesting successfully up until the 1980s. And there have been quite a few reports come in since then. And that's, of course, the burrowing owl. And I think burrowing owls are really neat because if you're living in a hole in the ground, like I've tried at times, you're not usually rated as very high in the social hierarchy. But it's actually a good place for them to live, especially if they're living out in the hot, dry areas, prairie dog areas. But when they're down there in the hole, almost anything could come down and block their entrance and cause problems. So the barred owl has a beautiful, unique, special trick. They can make a special noise that sounds just like a rattlesnake. If you look them up in Ben's Life History of North American Birds of Prey, and he'll talk about how they've gotten lots of reports of rattlesnakes living in a den with burrowing owls. And I always wondered about that. But you never know with natural history things what weird things could be true. And it turned out that it wasn't rattlesnakes, it was the little owls who learned to make that beautiful noise. So if you're out here walking around and you find a hole in the ground, don't mess with it right away. Have her come and stick her hand way down in there, because she could tell the difference between a little fuzzy owl and a great big rattlesnake. Probably, yeah. But the one we're going to take out doesn't hoot. It doesn't bark. Some of our owls bark. When I grew up loving the puppy dog owl. Only the scientists changed it to short-eared owls. And you don't get to see their ears. Their ears aren't really that short. But this one got named after owls over in Europe. But its name is confusing because it gets named after a special little noise that it makes. I never did princess.
Oh, okay. You can go down.
Do princess real quick?
Real quick, because
Okay.
we have a lot of birds to show you
Yep.
tonight.
This is one of the kind of birds that they found that has a special bioelectromagnetic sensor, a compass and more that goes inside their head. If you've got a compass and you know how to use it, it's hard to get lost. We work a lot in the western UP, and every year we bumped into people who were lost. 3 days without food, kind of lost. But
Very hungry.
but yeah, they had the GPS, they walked over a log, they slipped, and GPSs don't float. They bounce along the bottom. If you're ever lucky enough to find one after hours of searching, you'll be extremely lucky if they still work. Most of them aren't waterproof to be bouncing along the bottom. But anyway, they were out there literally for several days, really scrimping their food. They brought enough food to go 9 days, but they didn't really have enough for when they're active, and they got extra hungry, so they ate it early.
And weren't they the ones with the dog that they had to feed
Yeah.
the dog too?
Yeah, their dog was hungry, and they gave away the last of their food to their dog. But when we picked them up, it turned out they were soldiers on their way over the Desert Storm, and they were doing this as a training maneuver. And they had borrowed beautiful equipment from their National Guard unit, and they dumped it in the woods just shortly when they heard us coming because they weren't sure of us, because we were walking around late in the day, off trail and a few things, up chasing peregrines. But when we got talking with them, they needed to get back and call their unit, because if they weren't back by midnight, their unit would assume that they were in trouble. They would call an emergency muster and put everybody into survival gear and get them out in the woods hunting for them. Well, we found out where we could give them a ride back to, 37 miles away by road to get them back. We got them back there about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and they were supposed to call in no later than midnight, and the cell phones didn't work. We were up there along the coast of Lake Superior and the Porcupine Mountains. There's lots of places up there where the cell phones don't work. But anyway, having a compass inside your head can really be useful. And they're really good at finding their way home. They come from the desert areas. They live near a water hole, they fly right over the desert, they're looking for seeds, dry, hard seeds. They don't chew up their food. They pick up those tiny seeds, put them in the top of their tummy, pick up a few stones, put stones in the top of their tummy. Somebody's got muscles, and they use stones to grind up their food. So they don't really bite hard. They don't bite like some of the birds that are made to have their bill crack open dry, hard seeds or nuts or things. They will feel things. But being in the desert, she wants to go way out over the desert and go home quick. And she didn't have a compass. Well, once people figured that out, they realized you could raise them someplace, take them away, write a little message, often in secret code, put the message around the bird's leg, and the bird would carry the message home. Carrier pigeon, messenger pigeon, homing dove, or in much of the world, or in our part of the world, I said carrier pigeon, messenger pigeon, homing dove.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Doves and pigeons, most of the world doesn't use the word pigeon. Parts of Europe and we do. But the rest of the world, they're all doves. For a while, they tried to get bird watchers to quit saying that our pigeon was a pigeon and wanted them to call it a rock dove, a double-barred rock dove. But one would walk by and some Audubon person would say, oh, look at the dove. And everybody goes, ah, don't you know anything? That's a pigeon. Everybody knows it's a pigeon. Everybody growing up called it a pigeon. Everybody around us calls it a pigeon. And so they gave up on that. We did have pigeons when we first came over. We had band-tailed pigeons, white-crowned pigeons, and the passenger pigeon. But the passenger pigeon got wiped out. The other ones got seriously depleted. So the pigeons that we brought over are actually ones from over in Europe and North Africa. But for thousands of years, the fastest way to send a message was by pigeon. But we don't send too many messages today, but they race them. You race them, take a mile from home, they come home, take 5 miles from home, they come home, take them 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, 50. She was up the races of 500 miles. Wow. We got lost coming into town. But they are amazingly good at finding their way home. And they can do it because they have a special compass up in their head.
Up here.
Okay, well, you're going to take out next? And one that hides in the daytime, usually only comes out at night, usually only sings at night. When it sings, it never hoots, but it makes about 30 different noises. Beautiful ghost story noises. TV, you pick these guys up to use their sounds in haunted house movies. They actually do it on their own many times. She does a better screech owl.
Whoa, I didn't do that right, did I?
Almost.
Nice, Brian.
They get a little squeal, and so they get the name screech owl. We have the eastern screech owl and the western screech owl. Here they have screech owls over in Europe, which have been called screech owls before Columbus ever came over. So they were actually named screech owls. Today, most people who hear wild, loud screeches out in the woods think it must be a screech owl.
All the way around.
No, theirs is a quiet little screech. But the world used to be a lot quieter. So even a little noise, when it takes you surprise in the dark, can sort of make you wonder. But this is a full-grown adult, as big as you should ever get. And if you look close, she's got whiskers that stick out almost an inch right around her bill. They'll sometimes chase bugs flying around up in the night. We've had people call up and report seeing giant bats, giant vampire bats, right around here. Well, we do have a vampire bat in the Americas, but not up here, and they're not giants. But the little whisker feathers, right at the last minute, their eyes cannot see their mouth. Neither can we, but we usually squish our bugs before we eat them using our hands. So those little whiskers around their bill really help them grab bugs on the wing up in the sky. Almost all of the birds there are fly catchers, insect and eaters on the wings. A lot of people think cedar waxwings eat berries. Well, in the summer, they eat a lot of insects. A lot of people think cedar waxwings go north, but they usually just shift from right around here in flocks in the winter out to living along streams and chasing bugs over streams. But these guys have got beautiful little whiskers you have to look careful for to see them where they stick out almost an inch. And now some scientists think that anything that has whiskers around the mouth is a sign of greater intelligence. Okay. Other scientists, they just say it's good for catching bugs. I'm not sure those two things are mutually exclusive, but whiskers are really helpful in getting bugs. I mean, being smart or something. They come in a wide range of colors. They can be in many different shades of gray to being almost all black. They can be in shades from orange, the sandy color, to different shades of red to a dark rusty red. And for a while, when we're out sitting around doing bird studies back in the old days before every important nest had a camera on it, I'd read journals and stories of screech owls that had a lot of white on them. And I always wondered about that because barred owls can have more white on them to where some people get them mixed up with snowy owls. But most of our screech owls don't. But then one day I had a screech owl who taught me about screech owls that have white on them. We used to have almost as much birch forest in Michigan as we do aspen forest. But birch trees aren't good for the sawmills. You don't make a big profit off them. So along with all the state and federal land and land that come under professional foresters, they tell you to kill off all your birch trees, except for a few places where they are scenic and you can take pictures of them. Okay? But back when we had lots of birches, we actually had a lot of different birds that were good at living in birches, black poles and black and white warblers and other things. But having not deciding to suppress birches and go to aspens, they're also changing the community of animals they support. When this one first comes out, a lot of people think it's a baby. So it's not. So we thought we could probably have a baby picture to show you what a baby looks like. Okay? The picture is too big. Those are my hands, and my hands are not that big. So the real baby was smaller. It looks like an Easter candy, or maybe a baby snowman. Okay? Yep. At that stage, all he wanted to do was roll over and hide his face. He hated to be in the light, and that's what he should do. They're a cavity nester. Being white is not a good hiding color. Being white, in most cases, other than birch forest, they wouldn't have a chance of surviving. But if you're down inside a hollow tree at night, it can be dark. If you're on a cloudy night with no stars and no moon, it could be really, really, really dark. Having a little white fuzzball baby will help mom and dad keep track of them. And at that stage, they always wanted to stay down in the dark. But then they do that most scary of all things. They become teenagers. And they do what teenagers do best. They stay up all night long making weird noises, trying to drive grown-ups insane. They go into places they don't belong. They'll wait till people walk by them out there in the dark, and then they'll let out high-pitched screams wanting mom and dad to come back and protect them. So this is what a lot of people think a baby screech owl looks like, but it's not. It's a teenager. That's what a baby looks like. They start to sing as soon as they start to get the bigger feathers to where they can start looking out the door. As long as they're in their white stage, looking out the door would get them in trouble. But as soon as they get their fuzzy colors, then they can get up and they can look out the door. They can go out the door for short times. The ones that have dark around the eyes almost always turn out to be a dark screech owl. The ones that have the lighter around the eyes often turn out to be the red phase screech owls with a wide band in both colors. They were doing the nest checks because they will nest in wood duck boxes. And they were saying that all they had in their area were grays. But every once in a while they find an adult that was red. Because even the red ones as babies are gray to blend in with being inside a hollow tree more. They're good at hiding. They right away tend to learn every hollow tree in a 5 to 10 mile circle. They use lots of different hollow trees. They want to know how to get away quick. So they're made to look like the bark on a tree. They'll find a tree whose colors match. They'll set up straight. They'll put their little horn feathers up. And they're hiding. But you could see their eyes. Well, you could see their eyes until they see your eyes. And they know eyes. So when they see something looking at them, they shut their eyes. And even their eyelids are camouflaged. Sometimes they'll peek just one eye a little bit. But you can be out walking in the woods at night, and if you were lucky, you may pick out eyes out there at night watching you. But as soon as you turn to look at them, they're gone. You're watching, another set of eyes over there will open. And when you look at it, it's gone, and these come back again. But then when you look back at it, they're gone. So there's been beautiful stories of haunted woods where there are elves and pixies and little things living out there that watch you at night but disappear every time you look at them and only come back when you're not looking. And it's just the beautiful little habits of the screech owl. Anything else you want to say about them?
Just that they need a lot of insects, especially in the spring when they're feeding their young ones. They need tons of insects to be able to feed babies. They may have 4 or 5 young ones in a nest, There's probably records of up to 8, but that's for really, really good habitat. So commonly they'll have maybe 1, 2, 3, sometimes up to 4 or 5, but they're feeding and feeding and feeding young ones all the time. And the insects are so important. So if you want screech owls, a big old hollow tree where they can nest, or you can build a nest box and get them to use that. And they do use nest boxes pretty well, but they need lots of trees and they need bugs. So
They need lots of hollow places above and beyond their nest place.
true, yes.
Mhm. And typically they'll overhunt the area right around their nest when the babies are in it, because they need so much food. When the babies of many of the hawks and owls are getting ready to fly, they're often slightly bigger and outweigh mom and dad. Because mom and dad have been working so hard bringing all the food into the bottomless pits to help them grow. The feathers on the head are just feathers. It's amazing how there's still a lot of books out there that refer to those as ears. And they're not ears. We need an owl that hoots.
We have an owl that hoots.
We have a hoot owl?
Yeah, we have a hoot owl.
Any owl that hoots can get the nickname hoot owl. Around here in the open field country, hoot owls use the great owl, go wood country, combined owl, go find out north, the great gray owl in South America, the peck owl over Africa, fish owl over Europe and Asia, eagle owl, tawny over in India, scopes owl. Almost any place you go in the world, there are owls that hoot, and they all get the nickname hoot owl. So this one's a hoot owl, but it can scream. It can do the most beautiful, high-pitched young lady caught from behind in the night kind of scream. There have been thousands of calls to Sheriff Department, State Police, DNR, where people were sure there was a lady out in the woods screaming. They even set up teams to go out and try to rescue them. I signed up for one of those teams. It's going to be so great to run around out in the dark and rescue a beautiful young girl. and the screams are really good. And we had to practice at night not going out there and losing over half your search team, because it's hard to search any place in the dark. Usually you don't. And the screams always moved a little bit further, moved a little further. And I never got to rescue a beautiful young girl.
Well,
I never got to rescue anybody. But we got to see and hear quite a few barred owls. So when the calls came in, they felt they had to respond. If the one time they didn't, it might be someone who needed help.
this owl is going to be bigger. It's one that came to us. We knew it would never be released. It had already gone through rehabilitation at another site, and its wing was not going in the right direction. But it was locked in place. So we knew that. And so we put it where we could communicate with it a lot. We could be right in front of it. We could get it used to people. But it always liked to hide. We had a hiding place for it, a panel of wood where it could get behind. And he would hide behind that panel of wood, and then we'd look at him and kind of peek around the corner and go, boo, and he'd hide again. And then we'd do it again. He'd peek around the corner, and we'd go, boo, and then he'd hide again. So we did that over and over. Finally, his name became Boo. So this is Boo, and he still likes to hide. In the wild, this type of owl would hide right by a tree trunk. And he'd probably turn his back to you, and you wouldn't even see him. He'd look like part of the tree trunk. So that's what we do for Boo, because when he's out in front of all of you, it's kind of scary. He wants to hide. So I have to be a tree trunk.
Where he is, what he looks like. Where he is, what he looks like.
Oh, wow.
They're good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. No, it's right off.
Where he is, what he looks. Oh, the wind's blowing the tree, make it harder for you. Yeah. It's a real picture. You can see the tail, the tummy, and the top of the head.
Oh, no.
The eye is right in there, and the bill is coming up like feathers.
Can't wait to see.
Yeah, they memorize which trees they can set in and not get picked on. So they don't just know what they look like. I mean, I've asked that quite a bit. Why? How can they know they're going to blend in so good? Well, anytime they try it and a bird finds them and picks on them, they don't try it there again. So they usually have quite a few favorite places that they go back to in order to hide very, very effectively. They are a cavity nester, but we don't have very many big trees big enough for them to be inside very well.
He's talking to you right now. I'm seeing would you like to come out? And he's saying no. This is a safe place. It's like a hollow tree for him. So he likes to stay in there, but I'll talk him into it. Yes, you got to come out. He said, whoa, lots of people. He can hear you breathing. He knows how many people are out there. I know it. It's a lot of people. You hop up there? Good boy. That's a good boy. Get up there. Get up there. Good boy. This is the hard place. Yeah, you gotta come out. Ready for this? So, see, this is Boo, and I'm going to let him hide right by me in order to get him very close to me. I can't probably get him as close as the little screech owl, but he is bigger, so it's easier to see him. Beautiful, dark, dark eyes, and no horn feathers, no little plumicorns on the top of his head that people often call ears. Those aren't there. It's a very round face. His ears are tucked down inside the feathers, right across from the eye. We'll show you that a little later. But anyway, yeah, he's a very different looking owl with those dark eyes. We think that probably helps him hunt because he can perch in a tree, have his eyes wide open, and still be very well camouflaged. Very hard to see. Very good at hiding with those dark eyes. The owls that have light-colored or yellow eyes or light green eyes, they use them quite often to attract attention. When they want to hide, they need to squint their eyes. He doesn't even need to do that. He can have his eyes wide open and be able to hunt. So he's very special in that way. But these are another owl. I think I'm going to have to take my mask off. I'm just talking. These are another owl that really needs hollow trees. The mom, should be a little bit bigger than him. She'd be in a nest inside a hollow tree. She'd have 2 or 3 eggs. They'd hatch out, and they'd grow to be almost this size before they'd leave the nest. So you could have the mom, a little bit bigger than him, maybe 2 or 3 babies that would be almost this size, all together in one hollow tree. That tree has to be big in order to hold all those. And we tend to cut down a lot of those trees. We say, oh, it's getting old, we need to cut it down, it's dangerous, or whatever. You know, we need firewood. When we do that and get rid of all those big old hollow trees, we're destroying the habitat that this bird needs. If we cut them all down, we will not have this bird. When they don't have a big hollow tree, they will nest in areas that they think are close, such as a tall stump with an open part at the top. They will see, you know, maybe a little depression in there, and they'll try to nest there. They might find a barn or a shed or something. But most of those are not a good situation for this type of owl. They do get crows coming around, and you know, I have this situation in one right now where the crows will see a little crack in that big tall stump, and they'll pull at the white babies. They show up so well, and pull them out by the wingtips. So they just don't do well in a place where it's not quite the right type of hollow tree. So we need to save big hollow trees as much as possible just to have this owl. But they like trees for a place to escape from the great horned owl. Great horned owls are bigger, they need open fields to fly in. And if this little barred owl were to get out into an open field, a great horned owl would chase it right back into the forest. But the forest is safe. The barred owls can maneuver in between those trees, and they can get away from a great horned owl very easily. So wooded areas are so important. They like wooded areas near a river or any kind of wet area, wetlands or streams and so on, and they will eat lots of small mice, even insects, and they'll even eat crayfish. Okay, you're okay. He's kind of wondering, what are you doing now? Okay, I'm going to try to walk him back here a little bit, just to let a few more people see him up close, and then we'll see if he needs to go back in. He's a little shocked. And there are lots of people, you gotta let them see your beautiful face.
Tail, wingtips, tummy, top of the head.
You know what? Oh, yeah, they're pretty special. But they have a lot of language that is a vocal language. Like Bill mentioned, they can hoot, they can chuckle, lots of different sounds, maybe up to 50 different calls that they can make. Yeah, they have different things to say, basically. Yeah, and you know, the typical one you see in a bird book, they say it sounds like who cooks for you, who cooks for you all, but it's a little bit nicer call, really. I think a female's voice is a little deeper than a male's, actually.
Big upper over here, it's broken right through. See where the bones were shattered and broken. We often don't know. We can sometimes tell some accidents by some of the hints that get left behind it. Maybe another one if I can find it.
Joe, can you do any, is your voice working good enough to do some barred owl calls or not? No? Okay.
Great horns usually do a deeper group of 4. The hitch is on the second note. Barred owls, you do 2 groups of 4, and they're a little bit higher. But they can do them 1/2 of it. It comes out 4 with just a different hitch pattern than the great horn. The great horn can do 2 groups, and it sounds just like an 8-hoot owl. But they used to put the words, who cooks for you all, with the barred owl. But they can do short hoots. They can draw them out. They can take their short ones and turn them into dog barks. There were stories up north where people had dogs in a pen, and at night another dog would come in and start barking at their dogs, and their dogs would bark all over, and the people would run out, and they could never get a look at where the wild dog was that was picking on their dogs. In the morning after a snow, they went out and walked around their pens, and that wild dog made no tracks in the snow. It was a ghost dog who came in and picked on other dogs. It was a barred owl. They seem to do it just for the fun of it. They can do a little happy laugh. They can get carried away with a party and do a weird monkey laugh. They can do the high-pitched, beautiful scream. If we had you scream really good and loud in a high-pitched voice. I did that once and the security came.
Sometimes when he goes back in his box, he will make a nice little laughing sound. So when we listen to that, I can't ever tell you, for sure that he'll do it, but sometimes he likes to do a little happy sound when he goes back in. Can you do that for us? You have to be really quiet and listen for it, but it might work. Make any happy sounds. I thought we were going to do a happy sound. We'll be happy now.
Hey, hey. It's him most of the time. Usually he'll object to me doing that at him.
No, I guess not. Just, every night is different. I never know. But he'll make his happy sound. We know it's a happy sound every time we hear a barred owl do that. It's in a good situation. One time we had one that we took care of, rehabilitation. I don't remember what was wrong, but we took it back to release it in the same location that it came from. It went to its favorite perch and made its little happy. So it was a good feeling to know it was happy to be home.
This is one that used to live all over North America, almost. Today it's almost gone from most of its habitat, but they're still can be found in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota. So when they had put the word northern on its name, people thought it meant northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota. But there is one that is a southern in South America relative that is the southern one. They make two main noises. They make a beep, 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 beep. And then they make a whole bunch of little trills and squeaks that are quite musical, very similar to a screech owl. And because this one makes the two noises, beep, 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 and squeak, 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 its individual name is pipsqueak. But it is a full-grown adult male, means it's one of the smaller ones, northern saw-whet owl. They're hard to find. It turns out that they memorize, we're up to over 20 to 40 different hollow trees in their territory, and they spend most of their life just peeking out of hollow trees. Even at night, they'll often peek in a hollow tree out there for a while and then move to another hollow tree. So having extra hollow places is critical for these little owls. They can survive and outperform the big owls where the branches grow close together. The cedar swamp, black spruce, balsam fir, hemlock. Most of our cedar swamps are disappearing very rapidly because our deer population is so high, none of the young ones come up. And so instead, there's a plant called the tag or speckled alder that lives in the wetlands that is a replacement for the cedars because the tag alders don't get eaten by the deer so much. But they don't grow big enough to produce hollow places the way these guys like. They do eat a lot of insects. They flutter softly, and they've been compared to seeing a great big moth. You may remember back in the old days, we used to have great big moths, Luna moths and Polyphemus and Cecropia, but those are very rare today. Yeah. But sometimes these guys will look like a giant moth in their flight pattern. And that's because they don't want to fly straight and fast when you're in a cedar swamp. The branches are all over everywhere, black spruce, balsam fir, hemlock. So being a flutterer down through there works effectively for them. They will eat a lot of insects, tiny little insects, as well as pretty big insects.
These, I wondered about the kind of vocalizations they do, the sounds they make. I thought they were really boring little owls. You never hear them talk much. But I was a science teacher and I was gone a lot. So when I started working more around the birds and cleaning cages and stuff, I started hearing this little, well, it was like a short trill, and it was the saw-whet. I thought, oh my gosh, they are, pretty vocal. And I mean, everybody hears about the typical sound that they make. There's beep, beep. That's kind of low tone. Beep, 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 beep.
It actually has a double resonance.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You do that then.
A lot of birds have two voice boxes, a larynx and a syrinx. Some birds they think can actually make 3 different notes at one time. And a lot of birds can make notes faster than we can hear. They figure loons sing 20 times faster than we can pick them up. So if you can put them on a computer, make sonographs of them, every one will come up with its own voice pattern, and the other loons can tell each other apart by their voices. The screech owls, they actually trill at different notes inside their family. So when they're out there in the forest, they can pick out a trill from quite a ways away. Trill's a whole bunch of little notes. I'm not doing those good. But each owl seems to know who is trilling by the different pitches they trill at. So that once we accept that these owls do a lot of communication, a lot of talking in their own right, the more and more we get into it, it's hard for us to understand because they can make noises higher pitched than we can hear. They can make noises lower than we can hear. They can make the noises that we hear so fast we can't pick out the notes the way their own members can. So when you can't read their sounds, you can't pick up their language very good at all. And they have a lot of sign language.
And one little saw-whet owl that I had, she was getting older. I kept her inside over the winter. I was working at the computer and just, kind of listening. And she made an amazing number of sounds. So I started writing down what I thought it sounded like. They were a little zip, zip, or just
She very quickly started to answer the phone by ringing back to it.
But all sorts of sounds that we didn't know they made, but that was just an amazing revelation to know.
If you don't know that kind of bird makes that sound, and you hear that sound, you don't know it's from that kind of bird. So a lot of people, in order to be an owl, it has to hoot. So all these other noises go on out there, and when we're trying to find out how many owls there are in an area, you've got to get a very select group of people to go out and listen. Because I don't have higher pitch hearing anymore. I can't hear half of what she can hear, these little guys can hear. But I can be out with my dog, and he can hear noises that I can't hear, and he'll tell me. We have a beautiful golden eagle named Rusty that can't be released into the wild, and she's top bird. And when a person walks up in front of the cages, she'll look at them, and if it's somebody she knows, she makes one call. If it's somebody she doesn't know, she twists that call a little bit, and it's an alert call because there's a stranger there. I can be a quarter to a half mile away and not hear the call, but my dog will start telling me that Rusty says there's people back there and that it's a stranger. So I'm sort of the last one to know down the animal hierarchy. The message goes around. The young ones, they have little white eyebrows and an orangey belly. When they're real young, they look like a little gray dust ball. I checked that out, and my dust balls are about the size of a volleyball. These are more the size of a ping pong ball when they're in the gray stage. But when they're first leaving the nest, they're like that, and they're teenagers or first yearlings, and that's often when they get into trouble. And so many of the books don't carry the juvenile pictures, so you may see them, and they'll have a hard time being able to key them out.
Okay, this is a
Northern saw-whet owl, just like she had out, only these are some young ones that were brought in from a tree being cut down.
saw-whet.
Saw-whet, northern saw-whet owl.
I know
Everyone calls it just
fast.
saw-whet. Yeah,
We
saw-whet.
don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to take out another owl that is very rare, and I'll let you see if you know what it is first, and then we can help you identify it. You gotta be on my
Is that a golden eagle?
There we go. You are beautiful. Well, you can't tell what she is because she's got her ears or horn feathers or plume horns tucked down in. If she had those up, which she might do after she relaxes, but it takes her a little while to relax in front of all these people, she might bring those little feathers at the top of her head up. And they're really long up at the top of her head. You know it's a long-eared owl. They're very rare. They're on Michigan's endangered species list as threatened. So the reason they're rare is because of where they live. Normally they would be in a pine forest, and we don't have very many pine forests left. So we just don't have the right habitat at this point to have a lot of long-eared owls.
She came in, and I thought she was one of the prettiest owls we ever had. And I named her Jennifer.
And that doesn't really go very well with your wife.
She found out that before I ever met her, there was a girl named Jennifer, who I remembered her good looks. So this is Willow.
Yeah, her name is Willow.
We sometimes get dead beavers turned in, and the eagles will eat them. And I was out cleaning the cage, and I pulled up the parts of a beaver skull where the eagles had cleaned it all off. And my little dog was helping, and he had a hold of it, and I had a hold of it, and I pulled, and I pulled, and I pulled, and 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 pulled. There, finally.
What?
That's how much tooth they have hidden inside their jaw. They have to gnaw the bark off, and it comes off in little pieces from their big gnawing teeth. And then they don't have to break it up much more because they break it up in the way they peel it, so they don't need the middle teeth, but they need to grind up that soft bark, so they got a big set of molars in the back. But these are really used a lot. They're wore down constantly. And if a piece breaks off and they can't eat, they would starve to death. So they can push out more of their tooth if part of it gets broken off. I'd read that, but I had no idea how much tooth they had. Looks sort of like an elephant to me, hiding up inside that jaw. Because it almost doesn't look like the tooth would fit up inside that jaw. But they do. And then I got wondering, what about the top teeth? I've read stories where they put beavers in cages and they fed them soft foods or nothing to chew on, that their teeth could grow all the way around and go back up into their skull and kill themselves. So they need to have the good hard food to constantly gnaw on, and boy, are their teeth specially adapted. We used to have a Pleistocene beaver, and it was 8 feet tall. Boy, I'd like to see the teeth that one carried around.
So we have found some nests in Michigan. One was only, it was a disturbance. The nest was disturbed. And it was only about less than eye level, about 5 feet up. So that probably was not a good place for it. But we noticed that when we went in to see what we could help with, the mom got, away from the nest and was on a log, and she was kind of acting like she had a broken wing. And a lot of you see killdeer do that, you see ducks do that, owls will too. It's a little bit more rare, but they will also do a broken wing act to lead you away from their young ones or their nest.
She had beautiful horn feathers she can put up, but there again, they are not ears. They're just feathers. The real ear is a large crescent-shaped opening that looks like this gray part here, hiding down under their feathers. One is slightly down a little and forward, the other one's a little bit up and back, so that they don't line up directly like ours. That's supposed to show looking into the lens of a big owl from the side and looking through the nose of a vulture. Mm-hmm. So vultures are kind of neat because you can look right through their nose. But they eat dead stuff. They don't bite real hard, but they have to grab on the dead stuff and wiggle their head back and forth, and sometimes something yucky gets stuck in their nose. So they can take their toe and stick their toe right through their nose to clean it back out. Hey, anybody can stick their toe through their nose is a good friend of mine. Right, friend? This is the actual ear. And I got a scientist here who talked about the actual ear rather than the ear. Well, the ear is the part that sticks out. Okay? If something happened and that part got cut off, you could still hear, because the sound would go up into the auditory canal and hit the drum and set up a beat, and with the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, and go into the little snail up there with all the, yeah. So they don't have a part that sticks out, which is technically the ear. So it's one of those biology birder jokes that birds don't have ears, that they don't have the part that sticks out. They just have an opening of the auditory canal. But it's one of the things that you'll get when you get a little bit older, with getting into biology jokes.
In the biologist, right? Oh, come on.
You've had real good questions. I thought for sure you were going to be a biologist. Historian.
That's a good thing, too.
Whoa.
That's a good thing.
I don't know, it's all behind me. Whoa.
So anyway, I'm gonna take this one out and have a real quick look, and I really wanna include this because you're gonna start seeing it in your backyards. And right now, the bird books will show it as being a Canadian bird and really not even coming down this far to nest. So, you wanna know what it looks like, but what did we say about, did we talk about how the females are bigger and strong? We did do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And
If you see two eagles sitting up on a nest or on a branch along the river, and one will be markedly bigger than the other.
girls.
Which is bigger?
Girls.
The girls are always bigger, stronger, nastier, more aggressive. Which one talks the most? We actually had Central Michigan students come out there and sit in a blind and sit there and record the different notes and calls they're making back and forth, and which one talked the most? Girls.
The girls do, yes.
10 times as much. And the scientific explanation was they needed to keep telling the boys what to do.
So I want you to tell me, when this one comes out, is it a girl or is it a boy?
When birds are growing up, they have to go up really fast. If it's big, it would be a girl. And does it talk a lot?
Sometimes she'll talk a lot.
It hurts my ear.
Yes, she's high pitched.
Wow.
The group it's in is a falcon. We have Jeer falcons, which only come down occasionally. We have peregrine falcons. We have prairie falcons. We have the American kestrel. There's over a dozen different kinds of kestrels all over the world. So ours is technically the American kestrel. The same way the name robin was on a bird over in Europe long before Columbus came over. And our robin sort of reminded the other people of their robin back home, and the name got put on it. But the original robin is the size of a chickadee. And this one would come in so fast that you wouldn't see it coming. It would appear right in front of you as if by magic. And one of the most famous magicians back in old history was Merlin, with King Arthur, and the Round Table, and Sir Galahad, and Maid Marian.
There's a lot of modern historians that say that was all just a story.
Well, of course it was a story. But how much truth is in the story is where the question comes in, because there were several King Arthurs back in that time period, but it was so long ago it was hard to know what. And they think they got put together from several different time periods back there in the 800s, 900s, which was so long ago that even our parents have a hard time remembering that long ago. But it's a Merlin. The full adults are more gray. This one's more brown, so it's still a slightly not thing, but it's all the way grown up. A baby grown up in the nest has to have its bones fully calcified before it can fly. Once the bones calcify, they can't grow anymore. The first feathers that come out on hawks and eagles and owls are actually longer than they'll ever have again in their life. So when baby eagles grow up, the males fledge at around 70 days. The females fledge at around 90 days because they have to grow bigger. At 70 days, actually at about 60 days, the parents quit just handing the food to the baby. They hold the food up there and the baby has to vibrate its wings. This is how they get muscles. They build up their muscles begging for food.
Yeah, they can be a little more gray.
Then the males leave at 70 days. We've had people who have nesting where they're watching the nest really careful and, oh, the other baby's been abandoned. There must be something wrong with it. No. if the male stays there, the baby, as the girl gets bigger and bigger than he does, she'll start to take all the food. If he leaves and starts flying around and following the parents out, learning to hunt a little bit, then he'll get his share, and the parents will still bring back food and drop it off to the girl. But she's at that point, she's bigger when she puts her wings out than mom or dad. She's always bigger than dad, but she's bigger than mom because those first feathers that she grows are extra long. So are her tail feathers. So the babies, females, are bigger than mom and dad when they're ready to fledge the net. We gotta take that one with us.
Yep, we gotta save our feathers.
Cute one.
And then they go through several feather molts before their feathers come through shorter to be the size of the adults. But it's one of those confusing things because some people say, oh, if the brown one looks bigger than the white one, it must be a golden eagle. And no, it can just be a young bald eagle with this longer feathers of the first couple of feather matches. Okay, the next one's got feather sheets on his tail.
Oh, okay, well, I thought this one did too, so we'll see. But if I'm real careful, I can bring him out for a few minutes.
Way back, long time ago, in a century far away, peregrines were very rare. And so they tried to reintroduce them. We had peregrines nesting in Michigan. We have nesting up at Pictured Rocks where people came in and destroyed the nest. We have nesting over in Lake Ogeechee where people came in and destroyed the nest. We have nesting down in Fayette where people came in and destroyed the nest. We have nesting at Pictured Rocks where people witnessed and got pictures of people who went down and destroyed the nest to steal the young and took them away in '63.
Boy, you remember that? That's pretty good.
I had to learn all that stuff from my reports.
Aha. Yeah, they were actually almost extinct, almost gone all over the world, and you probably know that. But Joe worked on a lot of the project to keep them from going extinct up throughout the Upper Peninsula. And I was a science teacher, so I had to stay home. But I did get to go up and visit the sites and help out.
I got to go out and camp on a cliff up to 180 nights a year. On the ground, just sleeping out there, chasing the peregrines around, finding where they forage, where their food supplies are, where they like to roost to try to protect them. And if you're in a tent on the ground, miles away from anything, you never go into bear country alone. You always stay on the trails. I was off the trails, I was always alone. And when a bear pushes down through the top of the tent and grabs the sleeping bag and shakes it and drags it around, it's hard to get a good night's sleep. So I decided I really needed an assistant who could hear the bears before I would and would out-hike me, would be wonderful at finding animals and being excited over seeing animals, and could wake up in the morning with 8 inches of snow on top of our sleeping bag because we gave up using tents. And I got a beautiful blonde who could come up and do all this stuff.
Whoa.
You were 500 miles away. The cell phones wouldn't work.
Blonde.
I sent you a postcard about it. I gave it to a bird I thought was a homing one and would carry it. But this blonde could outdo me on almost everything to do with being out in the wild. And here's a picture of me and my beautiful blonde. And in the big picture, the blonde is right there. And then there's a dark shape right next to it. And that was my summer office. But she was very good at, you don't want a dog that's going to go out there and when it sees a bear, run out in front and bark every nasty name it can think of at the bear, and then run back and hide behind you. But you want one that will tell you when they're out there. And she was very good at that.
Is this the UP?
Yeah, Western UP. This is actually Lake of the Clouds in the Porkies.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and there's the dog, and there's me. And these were what we were working on. When they had their trials, they had like 3,000 applications that they went through. And very quickly they wanted to know who could live alone in the wilderness and had done it very much. And that, they got down to about 300. Then they wanted somebody who they could go across all the cliffs at Pictured Rocks, Grand Island. Some of the cliffs inland over by Lake Ogeechee are actually the biggest cliffs. And they could point to any place on the rocks, and you had to get there so you could be able to visit where they were nesting. And that narrowed it down a lot. And then they gave how much they were willing to pay, and everybody else quit. So, yeah, so I got the job. Yep. It's a dog pound reject. A Russian name drop-off. Somebody was a Russian by and I dropped it off. But it had a fantastic nose. I told the people at the ammo shelter, because we worked a lot with ammo control officers, that I wanted a smaller one than what I had, because I'd had dogs that weighed 80, 90 pounds, and they tend to tip the kayaks over. So they gave me this one, because they said it just has a wonderful nose and is so friendly to everybody. It got to be 135 pounds. And the only time she ever tipped the kayak was when she barked and she got an echo. And then she had to bark louder. And then that other dog up in the rocks barked louder. So then she had to get up and stand on the deck of the boat to bark even louder. And after a few of those, we found out how cold the water was. Yep.
That's a parrot?
So these were the areas we worked in. Yeah, and there's the dog, and there's me.
The young ones are not. Yeah, they have to be mature to hit all that color, and it depends somewhat on what they eat. So there are one that eats birds, and that does make a difference. If they were to be fed rodents, they would not get the right color. Yes, yeah, we wouldn't have it if it could be released. But yeah, one wing is not able to pull in like the other one.
Do you have a place like people can visit?
I wish we did, but we can't be open to the public. We don't have a facility. We've had people that, are concerned about handicap facilities and so on. We just don't have the funding for that kind of thing. So we do our programs out at somebody else's facility, which works pretty good, yeah. Yep, this is a male peregrine, and the female would be probably about a head taller. The males are prettier. The males in almost all of birds of prey are more refined and just really nice looking. And the females are heavier and kind of a blunt look compared to the males usually. So, but yeah, he's a very elegant looking bird, and the females are beautiful, but they're just not quite like the males.
They lay their eggs right on rocks. Part of the reason why it showed the eggshell thing showed up faster than them, and it occurred in eagle eggs. But they lined their nest with soft grasses and feathers, so they treated their eggs more gently. When you're laying your eggs right on rocks and the shell got thin, they died. And here's the mother and 3 little white babies. They get away with white babies because they like to nest on big cliffs. One of the teenagers, and then this is where the nest was. A 300-foot climbing rope stopped 10 foot from the bottom, where the talus began. So you went down the rope and then you went off the end until you were hanging from the end, and then you could let go and only drop 3 or 4 feet. So they had to have some idiot who would go.
You made a mess, didn't you?
I'll
get that later.
On a little rope.
Boy, you look at the camera.
What do you? You that idiot.
You gotta stay right there, just take the picture.
It did go this way, we didn't take it this way, and then just change it.
Thank you.
Okay. You're gonna go back in the box. Good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. Yeah.
There's where the nest was, it's up in a hole there, the mother and the baby. Oh, yeah. You've got the collection of like finding how much of those holes. Eight wedding rocks, babies and moms.
I know we're running out of time. Does anybody have any particular questions they wanted answered?
I was curious about, there was a nest on top of the Board of Light and Power. Do you know what happened?
No, we heard about that as we came in the parking lot, but we're not familiar with it.
That?
No,
Okay.
we worked all in the UP and didn't work on many sites down in the lower peninsula at all, but,
They told me that they took some measures to try to
Yeah.
rebuild them, but.
we were looking at the bell tower over in the church not too far away.
There have been sightings of the peregrine over by the bell tower at St. John's Lutheran.
That looked like a really good.
And that is,
Eggs.
Yeah, I don't know if the bell rings, that might be kind of bothersome. So.
There are some that live on the Shoreline Inn in Muskegon at the very top on the roof there. Two peregrines.
Ah. Question, say really loud.
What are some of the rarest owls?
Rarest owls in Michigan. Well, you saw the long-eared owl that I had out. That is one of the rarest.
It hoots though. So we get a chance to find them more likely because it will let out kind of long moaning hoots and some whistles. But the owls that don't hoot, most people would never identify them because they don't know what the noise is. So we don't, oh, I should have let one go.
Oh, well, next time. You'll probably remember to do it. Yes.
How many birds do you have?
Well, you know, it fluctuates, but we have around, I don't know, I think 20 on our education permit, but then we have others that are retired that we just, you know, once they retire from programs, they just stay with us. And then we have ones that come in, like the eagles that I talked about. There's a snowy owl that will go home tonight. There will be a snowy owl there, I think, is coming in. You know, so it fluctuates. But we often have anywhere between 50 and 100 at one time. We're gonna have to wrap it up really soon, I
It's a
think.
dog. I think it's a
Oh,
dog.
look at its feathers.
Iridescent
There's another
net.
question over
Okay.
there.
Okay, stand up for just a minute. Okay, so I'll do you first and then him. No, just step over here and put your hand like this. And then you take this and you shove it in and you shove it in and you shove it in and you put your finger through my bird. You got even longer fingers. Do it this way so they can see.
So where are you based?
And you don't throw your finger up
Right about
or
here,
anything.
near Mount
You
Pleasant.
just
Oh, Mount
leave it
Pleasant.
straight And send it in, and send it in, and send. Is your finger still there? Okay.
Just tease us, just so you know.
Yes.
Well, that's supposed to teach you about flying. Because when a bird flies, it has to push air down and backwards to make it go up and frontwards. So every time you see a bird flapping its wings, it's pushing air down and backwards to make it go up and frontwards. So when you're skiing, you have to push backwards to go frontwards. When you're ice skating, you have to push backwards to go frontwards. When you're in a canoe, you push backwards to go frontwards. So I always try to do everything backwards the first time because so many things, when I try to do them frontwards, they come out backwards. So you might as well do them backwards. They have to come out frontwards. There's some law from some famous Newton, big Newton expert.
Did you live with him? No.
We won't go into that. I stay with him most of the time. I've been asked that before.
So what bird is that?
Tell us
That's
what
actually
kind of bird that is.
giant pigeon or.
It came to us from over in Central Asia.
Okay.
And over there, they don't use the word pigeon, so it would be a dove. And it was in Kazakhstan or Tajikistan or Tajikistan or the hot dog stand or the I don't understand stand, in one of those. And for some reason, those people get an awful lot of ammunition and not much food, and all their wildlife is disappearing. So even though our band-tailed pigeon out west is suffering and very low, and there's a group that are trying to save this band-tailed pigeon, because they do the same thing the passenger pigeon did, but the landmass west of the mountains out there is very narrow. So they were never the big thing like the passenger pigeon was. But, yeah, when it gets over here, it's usually nicknamed giant pigeon.
Very big. Joe, we're gonna probably be locked into the library pretty soon here. We're supposed to be out by 8. So
You have to pack up.
Yeah.
Let's give them a round of applause. Please check out their website. I meant to mention that at the beginning, but Wildlife Recovery Association.
Wildlife Recovery, the wildliferecovery.org is